Hi guys, it's Emily, and today I'm here to bring you another recent reads video. As always, I got 3 books to talk about, so let's just get right into it. The first book that I finished recently was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I listened to this on audiobook, and it was my third Jane Austen of the summer, and I think it was my favorite of the 3 that I read. This is the story of 2 sisters, Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood, and it's talking about how they react to their romantic relationships and how they come to realize that the other sister does have a little bit to offer in terms of changing their worldview. It's about their family dynamics. It's about the power of money in social relations and just society in general at this time. And it's just really good. It was, as I said, I think my favorite of the 3 that I read this summer. And I haven't read this one in a long time, probably since like high school, but I love the Emma Thompson movie, the Sense and Sensibility movie, and I watch it like at least once a year. I love it. So I always have really strong images in my head, and I just really connect with this book a lot. And Eleanor Dashwood is just a person I really relate to, and I really enjoyed this book. I definitely recommend it if you haven't ever read it, or if you haven't ever seen the movie. I definitely recommend that. So I completed my goal of reading 3 Jane Austen books this summer. I read Mansfield Park in June, Emma in July, and then this one in August. My intention is to read Northanger Abbey sometime this fall. I've never read Northanger Abbey, so I'm looking forward to that. And then I'm planning to reread Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion again next summer, because those 2 I had reread more recently than these 3, so I am going to put those off until next summer, and then I'll have read all of Jane Austen's works at least once, and I'm excited about that. After I finished Sense and Sensibility on audio, I decided to pick up City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert on audio, and I listened to about the first half of this on audio, and then I picked it up one night because I didn't have anything else to read, and I just started reading the print copy, and it went a lot faster. I'm one of those people where I can read a lot quicker than I can listen, especially since I keep audiobooks at normal speed, just because I feel like otherwise it goes too quickly for me. But anyway, so I read this partially in audio and partially in print. This is the story of a woman named Vivian Morris, and she's writing a letter to a young lady named Angela, and we don't know why she's writing this letter to Angela, except that we know that Angela's father is somehow connected to Vivian. And Vivian starts her story in 1940 when she is kicked out of Vassar because she's not going to class because, she thinks college should be more about the experiences rather than the academics. So she leaves Vassar and she is sent to New York City to live with her Aunt Peg. And while she's there, she begins to make costumes for the performers in Peg's theater. And so it's about her experiences, her relationships. She has her sexual awakening during this time, and we see that and how that affects her life. And we see how she makes friends, and then over time we see how she sort of has a moment where it all blows up in her face, and we see how that affects her life, and then eventually we move into the latter part of her life, and eventually at the end of the book she's like an 85-year-old woman. So it's just the story of her life. I picked this up because I think I don't know if it was Olive, but somebody here on BookTube compared this book to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I read earlier in the year, and I really enjoyed, and so I decided to pick this one up. I liked this one, but I feel like I kind of read it at the wrong time, because Vivian is a very privileged person, and she talks a lot, especially in the first part of the book, about how she's very wealthy, and then even at the very end of the book, she talks about how everything that happened in her life that was bad was the result of her own bad choices. And so she never really is like touched by history per se, even though she grows up in the Depression and goes through World War II and all that. So I sort of felt like I don't know. I feel like I have a habit of reading about young, wealthy white women, and in this current climate, I'm starting to wonder if maybe I should try to. I mean, I know I should expand my horizons because I sort of feel like they are starting to all sound the same, and I don't know. I just felt like I had read the same story before, sort of, and even Evel and Hugo, it felt like it was kind of a similar thing, and I mean that's why I picked it up. But anyway, I liked it, but I am starting to think all of these wealthy women life story books are starting to run together. Look at my baby cat. She came up there. She's such a sweetie peatie. Alright, so my last book that I finished recently was The Warmth of Other Suns, the epic story of America's Great Migration by Isabel Wilkerson. And I started this in June, read the first 50 pages, and then put it down. And I just never got around to picking it up again. So in early August, I decided to reread the first 50 pages and then continue. And I did read about 50 pages a day. I found that worked really well for me, and I finally finished it. So I'm very, very glad that I did. This is the story of the Great Migration, which is a period in American history from 1915 to 1970, where millions of black Americans left the South for the big cities of the North in order to find a better life for themselves because Jim Crow laws were, impeding their life in a serious way, and also not only the laws, but just like the perceptions of black, like, I don't know what the word is, but like when white people thought they were getting too uppity and they would just lynch black people and, find the slightest excuse to hurt them and to tear them down. And so black Americans in great, great numbers began leaving. And it led to a serious shift in the demographic makeup of American society because the South became significantly more white and the North became significantly more black. And it started during the years of World War I because the North needed a lot more labor during the war, and so they started recruiting the black Southerners to come up, and then it just increased from there because people were inviting their families and their families were going to live with them, and it just became a huge thing. And of course the South began to suffer greatly because they didn't have enough labor, and whereas the North began to have too much labor because the North was also gaining immigrants from Eastern countries, Eastern European countries, I should say. So it just talked about all these issues, and then eventually the Civil Rights Act of 1964 began to slow these, slow the spread or the speed of the migration, but it did take several years, like a good, 5 to 10 years after the law was passed for the South to really, embrace it, or not embrace it, but like, respect it and follow the rules and all that stuff. And Isabel Wilkerson frames this story in the narratives of 3 different migrants that left the South. George, who left Florida for New York, Ida, who left Mississippi for Chicago, and then Robert, who left Louisiana for California. And she just follows them. She starts out, of course, with their early lives, and she talked about why they left, how they left, and she talked about their life in the North. And then at the end of the book, she discusses, their life after, pretty much in modern times, going all the way up to the 2009 election when Barack Obama was elected president, and how that impacted the black communities across America, particularly in Chicago, where Ida was living, because of course Chicago was the first city to really experience his political career because he was the state senator for that area, etc. So yeah, this was a fabulous book. I learned so much. Okay, y'all, Jim Crow was so stupid. I mean, I know you know that, and I knew that, but just all the little things that they did in here. And like, it cost so much more money because they had to build separate waiting rooms and separate bathrooms and separate everything. And it was like, that is so stupid. Like, come on. Like, not even, just on the economic standpoint, that's stupid. Much less, like, I mean, the human rights aspect, of course, is the most important, but, like, come on. It was so stupid. And it's like, no wonder black Americans are having such struggles today, because Jim Crow didn't end until, like, 50 years ago. That's not that long. My dad lived in Florida for a time when he was a kid, and he remembers seeing separate water fountains in his lifetime. So that is not a new thing. Or, I mean, that is not an old thing. That is pretty freaking recent. You know, it's like, what the heck? But anyway, this book was amazing. I definitely recommend it if you haven't checked it out. Isabel Wilkerson does have a new book out now called Caste, which I definitely want to get to someday. But yeah, this was amazing. Definitely recommend it. Currently, I'm reading these 3 books. I will not talk about them very much right now because you'll see them in my next recent reads, but I'm enjoying all of them, and I'm making good progress on my August TBR, and I should finish these all before the end of the month. I hope everybody else is reading some great books and that you're keeping well and safe, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!